an information session on our Masters, our MSc in International Marketing. My name's David Brown, and I'm currently the Programme Director, the Global Programme Director for MSc International Marketing. There will be a little change. There'll be a colleague taking over from me in September, and his name is Collins Ossay, and he's taking over from me as the Global Programme Director. And he's a big international marketing expert. So if you check out his work online, you'll get to see what it's all about. Okay, next slide, please. That's great. Thank you very much. So the first thing which I ought to tell you about is the structure of the program itself, so that you know what constituent courses you would be taking within that program. And it looks something like this, if we could visualize it. The first column on the left-hand side, they are the mandatory courses which you would take in semester one. So semester one runs from the beginning of September and it runs through until early December. It's 11 weeks with a 1 week break in the middle, which is a consolidation week where there is no taught content. You go away and you reread your notes. But that's semester one. And as you can see in the left-hand column, we have 3 mandatory courses which you take during that period. The first one is International Strategic Marketing, and that's led by my colleague Elaine Collinson. As you can see from just below there, it says 40% CW. That means coursework. That means that 40% of the mark which you get for that course is derived from coursework. So it could be something like writing a report, doing a presentation, and so forth. And you'll also see that 60% of the mark for that particular course is derived from a 3-hour exam. But if you sort of scan across the rest of the courses on this spreadsheet, you'll notice that's the only time that you see the word exam. So we don't have a lot of exam assessment in this program, but what we do have is in December, so it gets it out of the way fairly quickly. So that's your first mandatory course, International Strategic Marketing with Elaine Collinson. Simultaneously with that, or concurrently with that, if you like, you also take the next one down, which is Contemporary Consumers. That's led by Jane Priest, and it's 100% coursework. And you also take at the same time Marketing Metrics, so that's all about measuring and planning for success in marketing. And the course leader for that is Melis Silan, and that's 100% coursework as well. So they're the 3 mandatory courses which you take in semester one. Everybody who's doing the program takes those. In addition to that, you would choose one optional course which you take in semester one, and that's the second column along from the left-hand side. You would have a choice between creativity and entrepreneurship, or strategic innovation management. So you simply choose between those two. You choose one of those, then you add it to the 3 on the left-hand column, and in total you've got 4 courses which you're taking in semester one. Okay, great, excellent. So what happens then? Each of those courses, by the way, are worth 15 credits. So hopefully by the end of semester one, you've passed all those courses and you've accrued 60 credits. Then we move on to semester 2. So if you have a look at the 3rd column along from the left, semester 2 runs from January, early to mid-January, through to early April. Again, it's 11 weeks with a 1 week break in the middle, which is consolidation week, where you absorb everything you've learned so far. And again, you have 3 mandatory courses which you take in semester 2 and 1 optional course. So the mandatory courses, everyone takes Communications and Branding, led by Melis Silan, Sustainable Marketing, led by Ian Grant, and Research, Philosophy and Practice, led by Daniele Finelli. In addition to that, you would choose one from the 2 in the right-hand side, and that's a choice of Managing Diversity in Business, led by Lakshman Wimasalena, or Social Media Marketing, and we've not quite decided who the course leader will be yet, but you can choose between those 2. They're both very popular. Probably social media marketing is slightly more popular nowadays, but they're both pretty popular. And that's if you're studying in Edinburgh. If anyone is studying this and it's outside Edinburgh, then it would be social media marketing. You wouldn't take managing diversity and business. So again, you've got 4 courses in total, which you're taking in semester 2. You've got 3 mandatory courses and 1 optional course. Put them together, because they're 15 credits each, you have another 60 credits. And then at that point, what we do is we look at the dissertation. So the dissertation takes place in semester 3, and it works something like this. You need to be able to progress onto the dissertation by accruing credits. So if you've passed everything so far, that's fine. You go on to the dissertation. If you've almost passed everything, if you've got maybe a couple of D grades, but everything else is an A, B, and C, that's fine. You still progress to the dissertation course. It could be that maybe you've got an E grade or an F grade in something, and you need to improve that mark and you need to pass that before you go on to the dissertation course, in which case you would take resits during August and then start the dissertation in September instead of May. But that's a minority of students. Most students pass the first time around. So what happens is then with the sorry, I've just not finished that one quite yet. What happens then is basically the dissertation. You would get advice on what a dissertation looks like, what's expected of you, and so forth. We would give you a couple of information sessions where we meet with you. We find out what your aspirations are in terms of your research topic and also your methodology, and then the program director would try to put you with a supervisor for your dissertation who is suitable for that research and that methodology. Supervision on the dissertation then starts right at the beginning of June, and it goes through until the end of August. So you submit your dissertation. If you're a full-time student at the end of August, you get 12 weeks in which to do your dissertation. If you're a part-time student, then everything is double the time. So if you're a part-time student instead of a full-time student, you would do 2 courses per semester instead of 1, and your dissertation would take 24 weeks instead of 12. But it's pretty rare for people to be part-time. Almost everybody is full-time. And the dissertation is worth 60 credits. So if you add everything together, semester 1, semester 2, and semester 3, then you've got 180 credits, and that's what you need in order to get a master's in this country. There will be a very small number of students who, for whatever reason, aren't able to get to 180 credits. Maybe there's one course that they just can't pass, or a couple of courses that they really struggle with, and they might leave with a postgraduate diploma or a postgraduate certificate. But the overwhelming majority of students graduate with an MSc, a Master's in International Marketing. And if you complete your dissertation successfully at the end of August and you get the mark in September, you graduate in December. So for students who are joining this course this September, if everything goes to plan and you pass everything, then you would graduate, you'd walk across the stage in your cap and gown in December 2025. Okay, next slide, please, Hannah. Thank you very much. For anyone who is interested in the MSc in International Marketing with Consumer Psychology, it's very, very similar. Very similar, you'll notice. So you do 4 courses. Each are 15 credits in semester 1. You do 4 15-credit courses in semester 2, and then you do the 60-credit dissertation in semester 3. But the difference is, in semester 1, you don't get a choice. You get 4 mandatory courses, and here they are. Left-hand column, International Strategic Marketing with Elaine Collinson, Contemporary Consumers with Jane Priest, Marketing Metrics with Melis Silan, and Introduction to Human Factors, that's the main psychology side of it, if you like, with Terry Lansdowne. And you'll notice that that one's not 100% coursework. It's 40% assessed by coursework and 60% assessed by a 2-hour exam. So there is a little bit more exam assessment for students who are doing consumer psychology. Then in semester 2, you have 3 mandatory courses and one optional. So the 3 mandatories are in the middle column: comms and branding with Melis Silan, psychology for marketing with Greg Fantham. Again, that's 40% coursework, 60% a 2-hour exam, and research, philosophy and practice with Daniele Finelli, and that's 100% coursework again. You would also choose, additional to those 3 mandatory semester 2 courses, one of those in the right hand column, either sustainable marketing led by Ian Grant or social media marketing. So you put those together: 4 mandatory courses in semester 1, 3 mandatories and 1 optional in semester 2. As with the non-consumer psychology students, you would also do a dissertation in semester 3, exactly the same structure, but yours would look at not just international marketing, but an element associated with consumer psychology. So it would be related to your degree title. But apart from that, it's exactly the same principle and structure. Next slide, please, Hannah. Thank you. Okay, so some of the main differences between undergraduate and postgraduate, we get a lot of students asking us that. Of course, some students come to our masters from other undergraduate business programs. Some students come to us who have undergraduate programs in completely different areas, and they decide that they want to boost their employability and get something a little bit more applied, if you like, on their CV. So what's the main difference between undergrad and postgraduate? Well, as an undergraduate, usually your degree lasts 3 or 4 years, and it sort of builds up from being relatively easy in year 1 to getting progressively more difficult in years 2, 3 and 4. It requires you to have foundational knowledge, so prior learning in the subject area, and the pass mark, of course, at undergraduate is typically 40%. So I remember back to when I was an undergraduate, I don't think I ever got in the 40s, but I can remember certainly my fellow classmates sometimes got in the 40s, and that was still a pass mark. At postgraduate, it's a little bit different because it's 1-year duration, so September through to the end of August. It's more focused and intense from the start, so there's not really this gradual building up from easy to more difficult. It's pretty much at the same level because it only lasts a year. It requires that you already have an undergraduate degree. It requires also that you will be able to work independently for quite a lot of the time, and also to undertake critical thinking and writing. And that's important. We don't just want you to absorb and repeat knowledge. We want you to do something with it. We want you to be able to use it yourself, to pull it apart, to critique it and be analytical and critical about it. A pass mark is 50% at postgraduate. So yeah, I'm afraid if you get 45 or 47% at postgraduate, or 48%, it's no good. It's not a pass. So you need at least 50%. And for each of those courses that we looked at on the grids earlier on, each course is the equivalent of 150 hours in total of student commitment. So that includes the time in the classroom, in the lecture theatre and in seminars. It includes the time in which you would be doing your revision for exams or putting together assessed work like reports or presentations, but it also includes all your background reading as well. So even though the overall contact time which you have in the classroom is, you know, somewhere between 30 and 35 hours per course, expect to be doing sort of 1 hour of contact time for every 4 roughly of independent learning, and that will take you to your 150 hours per course. Okay, thanks, Heather. Thank you. So indicative dates. It's really great, actually. I've noticed that Heriot-Watt publish their term dates and also quite often their examination dates and their assessment dates years and years and years in advance. So if you just go to Google and type in Heriot-Watt term dates, you'll notice it gives you the term dates going up to about 2030. I can't even think about 2030. I don't know how much hair I'll have left in 2030. I hate to think. So if you want to think that far ahead, feel free. But indicative dates look something like this. This is the calendar for this coming year. As you can see, there's a welcome week, which runs from Monday, the 2nd of September to Friday, the 6th of September. There are lots of activities that week. We get people signed up to student societies. You meet the rest of your student cohort. You find out about your teaching timetable or your lecture and seminar timetable. You familiarise yourself with the city and with the campus and so forth. So yeah, it's just a very useful week to be at, and almost all of our students who are doing a course, doing a programme, will come to that that welcome week. It's very useful for getting to know the people who you'll be studying with for the following year. Then the teaching semester runs from the 9th, Monday the 9th of September through to, oh, it's quite early this year, Friday the 29th of November. So it's quite an early start and an early finish, especially if you compare it with, for example, English institutions, which tend to start a little bit later in the year and finish a lot closer to Christmas and New Year. As I mentioned, there's a consolidation week in the middle, and that runs from Monday the 14th to Friday the 18th of October. And that's basically so that you can decompress a little bit. If you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed by the sheer amount of information which you've had to learn, then you can step back from it. You can reassess. You can read through your notes and just take it from there and plan for the second half of the semester. With regards to the exam and assessment diet, that runs from the 2nd of December to the 13th of December. So any end of course assessments which need handing in, which are all handed in electronically, by the way, it will fall between those dates. Likewise, any exams which you have to take, they will fall between those dates inclusive as well. The official December break is after that, from the 16th of December over what we would call Christmas and New Year, so to the 10th of January, and then we come back and teaching starts in semester 2 on Monday the 13th of January and goes through to Friday the 4th of April. Okay, so that's what the two two taught semesters look like. We have an April break then, 7th of April to the 18th of April. The assessment diet which follows that, when again you've got any exams or any end of course submission dates, that's from Monday the 22nd of April to Friday the 2nd of May. And during that time between the 2nd of May and semester 3 starting, we give you plenty of information so that you can start planning the dissertation process. You can think about which sources you want to read, what methodologies you want to think about, and so forth. And then obviously you pass through into semester 3 and you do your dissertation, and as we say, that starts at the end of May, maybe the beginning of June sometimes, and you submit at the end of August. Then what happens is we look at all the results. Shortly after that, it's usually September time, and we ratify the results. And the winter graduations, as you can see in Edinburgh, on the 29th of November and the 1st and 2nd of December. So should you be successful, and you almost certainly would be, your graduation in Edinburgh would be one of those 3 dates. It is subject to change, but at the moment it's planned for one of those 3 dates. So yeah, the overall message there is that it's a full year course. It runs early September to late August, so it's not always conducive to long summer holidays, for example, because you'll want to be working on your dissertation at that point. But there are plenty of points along the year when you can take a step back and you can decompress and you can relax a little bit and explore Edinburgh, explore Scotland, or do whatever it is that you need to do. Recharge the batteries. Next slide, please, Hannah. Thank you very much. So yes, just to recap on the dissertation. Dissertation starts late May, early June. At that point, I have worked out who has got all the necessary credits from semester 1 and semester 2 to progress onto the dissertation course, and who might need to take resits in August to progress into the dissertation in September. We write to each individual student to let them know what that situation is. And if they are progressing immediately in late May, we allocate them a supervisor, which is based upon their subject area and also their methodology as well. Before we get to that point, earlier in the programme, around about January or February time, we have an information session which lasts an hour or 2 hours, and we will tell students all about what the dissertation entails, what to expect. Then when it gets to round about March or April time, usually April, we have usually a pizza and the profs session. Basically what we do is we invite you to come along. Hopefully there's pizza involved. There might even be a little bit of beer involved on campus and soft drinks as well. And you can socialise with each other, but also you can meet potential dissertation supervisors and find out more about what sort of subject areas you might research, and just have a chat about the viability of them. So when you do actually start, you have 5 hours worth of supervision with your supervisor, and that's normally split out into 5 single-hour sessions spread across the summer. You are allowed to get your supervisor to read 2 full chapters and provide feedback on them, so you're not going through this blind before you actually submit. Your dissertation has to relate to your degree title, so it has to be international in flavour. So it could be about an organisation which trades internationally. It could be about the differences between consumers in 2 different countries. It could be about an international takeover which affects the marketing of an organisation, but it has to have some sort of international flavour. If you're doing consumer psychology as well, then obviously it's got to have that element to it as well, just to ensure that it fulfills the title of your degree programme. And it has to involve primary data collection. So that means that to drive your dissertation forwards, you've got to go out and collect some data yourself, which could mean interviewing members of the public, conducting surveys through questionnaires. It might be having focus groups, anything like that, but you do need to use your own primary data. You can't just rely on data which is already out there in the public domain. But you choose the topic, we advise you on the topic, we get you to usually narrow the scope to make it more workable. But this is the point in your degree where you have a lot more freedom, you can express yourself, and you can indulge your passion in whichever theoretical area it is that most interests you. Okay, Hannah. Thank you. So briefly mentioned it when we were looking at the grids earlier on, but there is a range of assessments. Not much of it is examinations, some of it is. And as I've mentioned, if you're just doing international marketing, the only exam which you'll see is a part of the Elaine Collinson's course in semester 1 is determined by an exam, and part of it is determined by coursework. Whereas if you're doing international marketing with consumer psychology, there are a couple of other courses which have exams as well. But overall, across the entire programs, you're talking about no more than about 15% of your entire mark being derived from exams. The rest of it is from coursework. Some coursework is group work, but I drilled down into the detail recently, and the vast majority of all the coursework which students are assessed upon is individual rather than group coursework. So it tends to be essays and assignments, reports, reflective pieces in which we sometimes even just ask you to reflect upon your learning journey so far, halfway through the semester. So it can be all those kinds of things. We sometimes get you to perhaps make a short film or a blog, and we try to update these pretty much on an annual basis as well. So if new technology comes along, or if we hear about other universities doing really cool things, we might want to replicate that as well. So we change it a little bit from year to year, just to keep it fresh, to make sure that it's nice and modern and relevant to our student cohorts. We tried to test a range of course learning outcomes. So as you see there, it's not just knowledge, but it's also your ability to think in a balanced and critical manner. And it's your ability to put this knowledge into the context of real life organisations which you'll be working for in the future. So in effect, we don't just want you to be able to regurgitate lots of information about international marketing theory, but we want you to be able to use that in a context which is relevant to your future career, so that when you need to use it in the future, then you're already adept at doing that. Okay, next slide, please. Wonderful. So how we award grades, as I mentioned, at master's level, a pass mark is 50%, not 40% as at undergraduate level. And the grades look something like this. So an F grade, which you definitely don't want to see, that would be a bad thing. An F grade is from 0 to 34%. And that's where there's very little demonstration of knowledge. It's very, very patchy and insufficient indeed. You don't see many F grades. Grade E is the next one up, and that's from 35 to 39%. Some awareness there, some knowledge of theory, but it's again very patchy, significant gaps and mistakes, and a poor quality, lacking in structure. Then the next one up is a grade D. And you can see that's a very narrow band from 40 to, sorry, it's a bit broader band actually, from 40 to 49%. So it's anything in the 40s is a D, but that's a borderline fail. So it's basic work, it's dependent upon course materials, so it tends to demonstrate that the student hasn't gone out and done independent reading. And it's descriptive, but it doesn't really drill down into the detail in an analytical way. So a grade D, it's almost a pass, but not quite. You're actually allowed to have a couple of D grades and still progress through to the dissertation. A grade C, that's a pass, so that's fine. Anything in the 50s, it demonstrates knowledge, but it tends to be a little bit descriptive rather than being very, very analytical. It doesn't show a lot of independence of thought, and it might not draw upon as many sources as the higher work. Grade B, anything in the 60s, that's really good work, good level of understanding, slightly lacking criticality and balance, but nonetheless a very good example of work. And then a grade A, 70% plus, that's excellent work. So you've got that balance, you've got that criticality, you've got theory being applied into a practical context. You've got people, students looking at the tensions within the theoretical and academic literature. They're sort of not taking things at face value, but they're looking at different interpretations. So that would be excellent work. And the way in which all of this translates into your degree classification is this. You probably remember at undergraduate level, students get a first if they're 70 or above, or they get a 2-1 classification if they're in the 60s, or a 2-2 if they're in the 50s, a third if they're in the 40s, and then anything below that is a fail. It's slightly different to that at master's level, but it's the same sort of principle. So if you get 70% or more, that's usually classed as masters with distinction. If it's from 60 to 69% averaged across all the courses, then you would normally be a master's with credit. And if it's in the 50s, then it's a master's. Anything below that would not be a pass. So you've got masters in the 50s, masters with credit in the 60s, masters with distinction, 70 plus. There are a few little caveats to that, a few little bits of red tape that you have to sort of unfurl and tick, but generally speaking, that's how it works. That's how the grades work. Okay, Hannah. Thank you. So yes, personal development. Obviously, what we want you to do is to be not just good learners, but independent learners, researchers, and also practitioners of the future. We want you to be passionate about whatever it is that you do. That goes without saying, and hopefully you'll find that the people you work with who are employed by the university are very passionate about what they do as well. We want you to be eager to learn, as it says there, pretty much everything. So I find, as a marketing researcher and a marketing academic, that a lot of what I read about isn't just marketing, it's things which affect marketing. So it can be current affairs, geopolitics, it can be economics, it can be international affairs, it can be all kinds of different things which have an impact upon marketing. Psychology, social psychology, for example, geography and history, all these things can impact upon our understanding of our focal area. Aim to be able to share that knowledge as an expert. Obviously, we don't exist in a vacuum, so we need to be able to have impact with whatever we do, to make sure that the knowledge that we have impacts society and organisations in a very positive manner. We want you to think about your CV and how you grow your curriculum vitae in the direction that you want to go. I've got to say, as an academic, I have a CV, and every time I do anything of any note or get any recognition for anything, I update my CV there and then. So literally, I'm updating it 2 or 3 times a week if I'm having a good week, that is. And I would expect you to do the same kind of thing, because that is your shop window. That's your advert, if you like, when you're going out and you're looking for work. So you need to think about, how do I feed my CV? How do I make it more attractive, more impactful? How do I stand out from the crowd and be more attractive to potential recruiters? We want you to aim to build an international network that is deep as well as wide. Yep. So you'll have plenty of opportunity to do that, of course, on this program, because it's a very international cohort. You'll meet people from all over. We do have, of course, students from Scotland and from the rest of the UK, but we also have a great number of students who join us, particularly from areas like Nigeria, West Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa. We get quite a few students from South Asia, so particularly India, Pakistan and Bangladesh. We have quite a few students join us from China as well, Malaysia, Singapore, and some from North and South America. So we get a real spread of people from all the way across the world. And you'll be able to obviously keep those networks, nurture those networks, keep in touch with each other throughout your working lives and your careers. But also, we'd like you to build up those relationships wherever possible. Okay, Hannah. We have as well a skills hub. So in addition to everything which you learn in the classroom, in lectures and in seminars, and indeed from each other, we have lots of other resources which you can draw upon as well. A lot of them are offered by our university library. So it's not just a repository for books, it's also a resources hub and a skills and training hub, so that you can tap into courses which they're constantly offering on different aspects of educational skills. And that's true even of members of staff, not just of students. I will quite frequently go along to courses at the library which are about, for example, how to get more out of doing an academic literature review, or how to have better time management or something like that. And I'll go along to these courses quite frequently, and certainly I would expect you would too as well, because it makes you a more productive student. So we've got all those: study skills, group work, time management, critical thinking. Critical thinking can be quite difficult because it's basically making that transition from retaining knowledge to doing something with it in a very balanced way, which is individual to your personal perspective and experience. And that's really what we want you to do at master's level, is to bring a bit of you to the game, rather than it being us putting something on your plate and you carrying this plate around and saying, look, I've not spilt it yet. We don't want you to do that. We want you to do something with it, to take those ingredients and to make it into something which is very idiosyncratic and very specific to you, your needs and requirements and your experiences. There's training also there, look on citing, on referencing, on making sure that you avoid plagiarism and so forth, research skills, and also IT skills as well, PowerPoint, OneDrive, Teams, and other Office 365 apps. You can get training on that as well. I imagine you're all a lot better than I am at PowerPoint and Teams and OneDrive and that kind of thing, but if you're not, the training is there for you. Okay, thanks, Hannah. One thing I didn't mention earlier on is typically within a course, I mentioned that a course is 11 weeks and that there's a week in the middle, which is consolidation week, where there's no scheduled teaching, where you decompress and you go back through what you've already learned. So within a course, you've got weeks 1 to 5 and weeks 7 to 12. Basically, where there's talk content. Each of those weeks, you would typically have a lecture, one lecture for each course, and you would have a seminar or a workshop for that course in weeks 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, and 10, is that right? And 11. So eight weeks you would have a seminar or a workshop, but all of the weeks, excluding consolidation week, you would have a lecture. Some courses, it's a 2-hour weekly lecture and a 1-hour weekly workshop or seminar. On some courses, it's the other way around. It's a 1-hour lecture and a 2-hour weekly workshop or seminar. But what we do is we make sure that the lecture is scheduled earlier in the week than the workshop or seminar which it corresponds to. So you get to learn the knowledge earlier in the week, and then later in the week you get to explore that knowledge, to put it into context, to discuss it in a more informal manner with classmates and so forth. So in terms of your contact time, it's round about, it depends on the course, but it's somewhere between 30 and 35 hours per course contact time during the course of a semester, and that's per course. And of course, you've got 4 courses going on. Okay, I think that's pretty much everything. What I would say also, and it's possibly been mentioned elsewhere, is that the campus where we're based is absolutely gorgeous. We're about 5 miles from the centre of Edinburgh. There's a bus terminus immediately outside the business school. Buses go from where we are into the middle of Edinburgh about every 5 or 10 minutes, so you don't have to plan in advance. You just turn up, get on a bus and go. The buses go through quite a vibrant area in order to get to the city centre, so there are lots of bars and restaurants and cafes and cinemas and things like that. A nice, very vibrant multicultural part of Edinburgh as well, so it's a fun place to be. But the campus itself, because it's 5 miles from the middle, you've got that little bit of breathing space. We've got what we call a loch, and a loch is the Scottish word for a lake. There's a lake in the middle of the campus with swans and ducks and geese, and the campus itself is set on a very large parcel of land, and there's a beautiful wooded walk which goes all the way around the perimeter, which takes about 45 or 50 minutes. So it's about 3 miles to walk all the way around the perimeter, and they're beautiful and landscaped. You've got great sports facilities, a wonderful campus sports facility called Orium. And the facilities are so good that the Scottish national rugby teams for men and women and the football teams and the local Scottish Premiership football team all train there. So, you can be walking from a lecture to a seminar on a Wednesday afternoon, on a Wednesday morning, and you can see all these professional sports people outside playing football and practicing their rugby and things like that. It's an absolutely wonderful place to be. So it's quite nice and bright and airy, lots of trees, lots of nature, but you've got everything that you can require from Edinburgh just a very short bus journey away. And of course, Edinburgh, beautiful. You've no doubt seen this. You've Googled it. You've seen it on film, seen it in movies. Edinburgh is a stunning city. It's, I would say, the nicest city in the United Kingdom. And I'm English, and I say it's better than any English city. It really is. Okay, I can't think of anything else. You know how it is. I'll probably hang up or walk away, and then as I'm getting my cup of coffee, I'll think of another 3 or 4 things which I could have told you. But basically, if you do need to know anything, if you think of anything later on which you can't think of now, then please just drop me an email and I'll try and answer your question. Any questions now? Perhaps I should mention that we have personal tutors. So every student who studies with us has a personal tutor allocated to them, and the personal tutor is there to help you with any non-academic issues which you may have, so any pastoral issues. So if you're having problems with, for example, visa applications, or maybe you've got a personal extenuating circumstance, something's happened in your personal life which you need the university to know about and take into account, or maybe you're just homesick, or maybe you need to pause your studies and have a break in the middle or something like that, then you have a personal tutor who is there to advise you on the process and to tell you how to navigate your way through our systems and processes to make sure that you're not left floundering. So that's a very useful thing to have. And I think if I were to go to university again, it's a while since I've been there as a student, but if I were to join a university again as a student, I'd be thinking about that, because without that, university can be a slightly daunting experience. But if you've got a critical friend there, someone who will help you through those processes, it becomes less daunting, I think. And our personal tutors are really good, very, very supportive and very helpful to our students. And they make sure that if you have any sort of issues, any sort of problems, they always get resolved. Let me tell you about average class sizes, because I can tell you that might be a question which crops up. You might, when you go home or when you turn off the computer, you might think, oh, yeah, I might have liked to have known about average class sizes. It varies a little bit, and some of the courses which we teach are taken by more than one program cohort. So you'll notice that some of our courses are taken by MSc International Marketing students, They're also taken by international marketing and consumer psychology students. And a couple of those courses might also be taken by master's students who are taking other programs as well, like economics or international business management. But typically, a class size, a lecture could be a little bit bigger. So, you know, a lecture, you could be in a big lecture theatre, a tiered lecture theatre, and that could be, oh, for a big lecture, you know, you might have over 100 students in there. But then for a seminar or for a workshop, you're talking about a much smaller class size, because we want students to interact with each other and to have the opportunity to be able to discuss their ideas and to put them into practice. So typically for a seminar class or a workshop class, we're looking somewhere between 20 and 35 students. It's usually, I would say, on average, about 25 or 26 students. And it's a nice number, because if you have fewer than that, you don't have enough ideas bouncing around, and if it's more than that, you know, you get students sort of splitting off into separate groups. So that seems to be round about the optimum size we find, and that's how we run it here. You might want to know about the weather, actually, because that's always a big conversation point when students come along to Edinburgh and I'm meeting the students in one-to-one situations. They always say, oh, it's a lot cooler than it is at home. And I'm supervising a student at the moment on her dissertation, and she's from Karachi, and she says, oh, at home in Karachi at the moment it's about 43 degrees C. Well, in Edinburgh at the moment it's about 20 degrees C. So we think that's slightly warm, but not very warm. So it's about 20 degrees. In the middle of winter, yeah, it would probably get down to freezing at some point. It wouldn't get much below freezing point, and it wouldn't do it very often, but at certain points in the middle of the winter, yeah, it can get down to freezing point. So you wear a hat, you wear gloves when you go out, and maybe a scarf and a warm coat, and everything's fine. Everyone does the same thing. And then when it gets warmer, then you know you dress like this, and it's quite easy to manage. So we just look at the weather forecast and we find out what the weather's going to be like the next day, and we dress accordingly. If it's going to rain, for example, you might take an umbrella with you, but the weather's fine. And what you'll find, as I say, is in the middle of the summer, it's pleasant. It's pleasant. It's a nice mild summer that we get here. We don't get 40-degree temperatures or 35. We almost never get as high as 30. We sometimes get in the high 20s, but it's pleasant. Any other questions from anybody? Aha, right, Acti. Let's have a look. Thank you for this. Greetings, sir. Thank you for this session. It's a pleasure. I wondered something regarding participation for the courses. I'm a student of robotics MSc. Wonderful. Of course, Heriot-Watt University is home to the National Robotarium. So we are the best university in the UK for anything connected with robots. And these courses of marketing caught my attention. Fantastic, and glad to hear it. Is it possible for me to join a few of the courses as a guest student without enrolling them officially? Thank you for your answer. The answer to that actually is I don't actually know. I'd have to refer you, I think, to Hannah on that one, and maybe she can have a chat with you later on. Generally speaking, the answer tends to be no, because we have a resource requirement. We have to know how many students are in the class. And if we have students who aren't on a program going into the classes on that program, then sometimes we can end up with overcrowded classrooms, and it could end up that we've got too many to comply with fire safety regulations and so forth. So generally speaking, it's not something we do. But as Hannah says, if you email study with us at hw.act.uk, they'll be able to chat about it in a little bit more detail. It's possibly something which the local course leader would be able to do. So, for example, if you're interested in a course which is specifically about artificial intelligence in marketing, it may well be that if you ask that course leader, they'd be able to provide you some access. But it's not something which I could really answer at a program level. But if you email that address, they'll be able to have a chat with you about it. Okay. Another question coming in: are modern marketing platforms tied to social media, print, TV, radio, hoardings orchestration, or is there scope for programs and platforms with a pure focus on disseminating product and service knowledge? Okay, in terms of what we discuss in marketing, when we're looking at the marketing communications, which is Melis Silan's course, she'll look at all different types of the marketing communications mix. So yes, there will be traditional media in there, print media, broadcast media, and so forth as well. But there'll also, of course, be digital media as well. And the idea is that we'll blend those together and we'll take an omni-channel approach. So that basically means that we realise that the customer journey isn't a little bit on print and then a little bit on the TV and then a little bit outdoor hoardings and a little bit digital. It's all mixed together far more than that in a very random and haphazard way. So we tend to take an omni-channel marketing perspective of marketing communications. So I hope that answers that question. But yes, certainly we look at products and services as well. I'm a services marketing academic. My PhD was on internal marketing, so yes, we certainly focus on those perspectives as well. Okay. Any other questions? Well, we're just coming up to what is midday in Edinburgh. I don't know what time it is where you all are, but one thing I didn't mention is that we have a very nice bistro at the business school, the EBS bistro, the Edinburgh Business School bistro, and it gets quite a pleasant and vibrant place to be about 11:30 in the morning until about 2:30 in the afternoon, and people go there to meet up and socialise. You've got a coffee shop in there, very nice food, it's a very relaxed atmosphere. So with that, I will probably have to say thank you very much. It's been wonderful meeting you online. If anyone has any further questions at all, please don't hesitate, just drop me an email and I'll try and help you. But I hope you come here, and I hope that we see you in September, because it's a wonderful place and you'll have a great time here.